Hello there. Thank you for staying with us and welcome to Channels Beam on Channels Television. I'm Victor Matthias. Happy Eid al-Fitr as well as also Happy Africa Day. Now, though Nigeria has moved the Democracy Day celebrations to June the 12th, May the 29th still remains significant in the nation's political history. And with the handover day around the corner in the midst of the fight of the coronavirus pandemic, this episode of the program will examine how youths have fared since the passage of the Not Too Young to Run bill, which constitutionally gave young people the right to run for various offices depending on their ages. Now, for the first time in Nigeria's post-independence history, young people between the ages of 25 to 30 were legally empowered to contest for seats in the House of Representatives and the state houses of assembly. The question is, how did they fare and how well are they doing in their respective offices? These are questions we'll be finding out answers to today on the show. But before we dig into that, let's see what made the trends in the social media in the past week.
Muslims in Nigeria joined their counterparts from around the world to celebrate the end of the Ramadan fast, which is celebrated as Eid al-Fitr. They exchanged messages of hope, resilience, and commitment as the celebration took place amidst the fight against the coronavirus pandemic. Africans are holding no joy back in the midst of the coronavirus as they celebrate the day the Organization for African Unity, now the African Union, was formed 57 years ago with the aim of promoting political, economic, and social integration among the family of African states and to eradicate colonialism, apartheid, and neocolonialism from the African continent.
Well, let's get the show started, but you can also be a part of the show where you're watching from anywhere around the world. Just tweet at us at the hashtags and the social media addresses showing on your screen at Channels TV, at Channels Beam, at Victor_MBIDI, as well as hashtag Channels Beam. But joining us to answer some of those questions that we put out there just before we started the show, we have with us in the Lagos studio Dio Israel. He is a Henley Business School young leader who has twice been named as one of UK's 50 brightest young leaders. He is also a member of the British Council Global Changemakers Network and an alumnus of the US Department International Visitors Leadership Program. And as a result of his work, he was specifically or specially invited by the Queen, that's Queen Elizabeth II and the Duke of Edinburgh, to a private reception at Buckingham Palace. It's a pleasure to have you in the program, Daya. Of course. We also have joining us via Skype from Abuja, Samson Itodo. He is the executive director of Yaga Africa and the convener of the Not Too Young to Run movement. He has facilitated the development of policy documents on electoral reform, international development cooperation, constitution review, public governance, and political inclusion. The impact of his work has earned him recognition from international and local organizations. Samson, it's a pleasure to have you on the program today.
Always a delight. Thank you.
Of course, you're welcome. So, kicks out the conversation for us. Just before 2019, what was the situation exactly, in terms of the political space for young people? What was their fate, so to speak, in terms of contesting now for political office?
Well, before thanks for this very important and timely conversation. Before the 2019 elections, the youth representation in public office, that is the 1,558 elective positions, excluding constituencies, local constituencies or local council elections, the youth representation was 5.1%. Now, before the 2019 elections, the legal framework for our elections was very hostile to young people. And this is in relation to the age for running for office, the cost of politics or the cost of elections, and the lack of internal party democracy in our political parties. And with the signing into law of the Not Too Young to Run, we saw an increase in the number of youth candidates. So youth candidates shot from about 25% to about 38% youth candidacy in the 2019 elections. And for the first time, like you noted in your earlier remark, that we saw an increase in the number of young people who are sitting in State House of Assemblies today. So by 2015, we're 5.1%. By 2019, we're about 6.6%. So there are about 103 young people between the ages of 25 and 35 as at 2019, as at last year, who are currently in public office. And of this figure, you have 22 of them who are
So
in the
that brings
State
me to
House of
my
Assembly.
sorry, something to budding, but that brings me to my next question. Thankfully now the numbers have risen of young people in those offices. But I mean, this is 1 year since everything took shape and they took office and all of that. How well would you say they've performed?
Quite frankly, I wouldn't say that we've made incremental progress, but we are not where we would want to be because the demography of our country still shows that young people are in largest bulk of our population, and public offices are still dominated by old and expired politicians that we've got to retire. In due course. But how have these young people fared? A lot of these young people in the State House of Assemblies, we've seen over the last 1 year, have sponsored several bills, several motions in the State House of Assemblies. As you would know, there are four State House of Assemblies today that are led by young people. In Oyo State House of Assembly, in Kwara, in Plateau, as well as the Zamfara State House of Assemblies. And these speakers have been providing excellent public leadership in their positions. In the House of Reps, we also have young people who are under 35, who have sponsored legislations, who have sponsored bills and motions. So they've been performing. You also see in the area of constituent engagement. In fact, in the current pandemic or outbreak of the COVID-19, all the young people who are in office today, 22 of them that we've been monitoring, have been supporting their constituents with palliatives. They've been there for their people and have been holding constituency engagement and also educating their constituents. But the challenge of public office still exists. And they're trying to navigate, the
The pitfalls, I understand, but just before you go into that, let me quickly bring Dio into the conversation. So he was just going to speak about the pitfalls, the difficulties in public office. But by your own estimation, I mean, you are also in the space. I mean, you've seen how things have been going.
Two elections in the bag.
Exactly, two elections in the bag. What do you think is that Achilles heel, for young people in this space that has been dominated by, the elders?
So, Victor, before I go into what the challenges are, one of the things that I have noticed from my experience, having run for office and now holding a political position now as a member of the board of the State Universal Basic Education Board in Lagos State, I've realized that the Not Too Young to Run campaign is now it's beyond just the running for office, but actually active political participation of young people in leadership and in decision making. So what the other model beyond the election, as Samson alluded to correctly, is the fact that beyond running for public office, we now also see more engagement of young people holding senior political position in appointment in states. So, for example, let me refer to about 2 or 3 states. In Lagos, for example, we see for the young, I would arguably the first time, the youngest commissioner for finance in Lagos, a very juicy position. Okay, maybe that sounds wrong. A very important position,
Yeah.
given to someone under the age of 35. We have in the cabinet of Jide Sanwo-Olu, Governor Sanwo-Olu, we have about 15% really young people are Greek, SA Agri, Commissioner for Finance, which is very key, and also I think civil innovation and creativity and a few others. If you look at a few other states, or your state, for example, also had a commissioner for youth that is under 30, and if I recall, there are about 5 other states apart from the Achievers, which is really the Cross River and the Akwa Ibom, which is largely south-south. But also coming down to our southwest here, and in particular in Lagos and some other state of the Federation,
What are the challenges?
The challenge that we have seen, though, for young people getting there, first, as Samson also mentioned, is financing. So financing is one because politics is expensive. To first, I said it a lot of times, to even put a poster out there, 1,000 poster is not less than 45,000 naira. That's double the minimum wage. So if you want to reach out to a community, let's say you're running for local government chairman, the kind of spread and the kind of money you're going to spend. When you're engaging party structure, for example, the party escorts, the party leaders, it costs money. For example, during this period that is palliative, just because you're an aspirant, you have never won anything, you are not holding any position, but just because you have run for something in any community, you are expected that you are going to be able to play a role to begin to provide palliative. So the reality is the current structure that we have, which is actually not just government-driven, but also people-driven, encourages corruption that by the time people then get in there, they have no choice because the expectation of those who are back home. So if we're going to talk about youth political participation, we must also begin to think about orientating the people back home and in the grassroots to understand that it's about service.
You're talking about the stomach infrastructure.
Yes, yes. So there's also the mindset that, you are going there because of money, so let's get what belongs to us. So that's still there. Beyond the mindset as well and beyond the money, it's also the culture. The culture that we have is just begin to open to first a wider women participation and also young people's participation in critical position. But one of the solutions that I believe is that we should lay less concentration on young people actually contesting for position, but let's begin to get more young people into positions like cabinet, like special assistant, like other appointments in the state. Let them groom themselves. Let them get experience. Let them get into the structure, and they can grow within the ranks.
All right, let me bring back Samson again. Samson, so we're still looking at, the challenges and also, of course, possible solutions. You were going to delve into that before I held you back a bit. So if you could just tell us again, maybe more of the challenges or the challenges you see from your own perspective.
First, there's something fundamentally wrong with our governance system. And so when we talk about the participation of young people, women, and persons with disability, it's not just about fulfilling a democratic ideal. It's about reclaiming the state because the state has been captured. Therefore, when these young people got into office, just navigating those vested interests that are deeply entrenched within our system became a challenge for most of them. And so still understanding how governance works. And because we don't have institutions that build leadership capital in young people and expose young people or even people and leaders to leadership and governance, that gap still existed. And a lot of them now had to adapt to some of the changes that they found themselves and the environment that they found themselves. The second critical challenge is this lack of delineation between politics and governance. That when you come into public leadership, it's no longer political. It's no longer politics. Time for politics ends with elections. And so and the point that Daya was making about the reorientation of our people is very critical. A lot of them came into office over the last 1 year with fresh and new ideas, but they were confronted with pushback. So in the public space, there is no avenue, there is no opportunity for new ideas because those who have held sway in public leadership position still want to maintain those vestiges of the old order. Therefore, understanding how
hopefully that will change, just like, the fact that people below a particular age could not, seek certain offices, perhaps, as time goes on, with more, outcalls and outcries, by people like you, civil society. Maybe all of that will change in the very nearest future. But again, I have to say thank you again, Samson Itodo, for joining us on the program from Abuja via Skype.
Thank you.
Of course, you're welcome. Abdayo. Also, it's a pleasure to have you on the program today. But hopefully, all these things will change. Money will no longer be like a factor.
If I have a final word, I think it's for young people to begin to look beyond running for office. The local government election in Lagos will happen in the next 1 year, perhaps. I want to believe so. Young people are going to start buying forms, trying to attempt to do that election.
Okay.
But it's not until when election comes that you want to run for office. Begin to serve in your community. Begin to play your part, and opportunities will come.
Let's hope all of that will happen. But again, thanks for joining us on the program.
Absolutely.
We'll take a break, and when we return, we'll look at a different perspective. This time around, we're looking at the coronavirus and the challenge that people are having, as those who are COVID-19 free, the challenge they're having, in accessing healthcare. That's in a moment. Please stay with us.